Okay, let's dive in. We're going to a place that's really frozen in time, isn't it? A scene that just perfectly captures that thin line between the big American dream of the frontier and, well, the absolute worst kind of nightmare.
We're taking a deep dive into the Donner Party, looking at the historical accounts, the analysis that's been done since. And our goal today really is to follow their journey.
Not just the physical miles, right, from Illinois out west.
Exactly. Not just the physical path from, like you said, hopeful Illinois to the absolute horror in the Sierra Nevada mountains, but also that psychological journey. How did these, respectable people make choices that led them to where they ended up?
And to really get the gravity of it, we almost have to start at the end. Picture this. It's February 1847.
Yeah.
If you were there, you'd be standing on a mountain ridge. Everything's muffled. There's this weird crushing silence because there's just so much snow.
Over 20 feet of snow in places. An unbelievable amount. The whole world is just white.
And below you, buried in those drifts, you can barely see these crude log cabins they built. They look like dark little holes almost swallowed.
That's the scene the first rescuers found. They fought their way through all that snow, finally reached the camps, and what they saw, it shocked them to their core. It's something that never left them.
The reports they sent back, they're not just dry historical records. They read like pure horror testimonies. They talked about finding, and this is a quote, human skeletons in every variety of mutilation.
Awful. They described bodies with, quote, half the flesh torn from them, lay on every side. Even the air, they said, smelled of decay and starvation.
It makes you confront this really stark contrast, doesn't it? Because these weren't, desperate criminals or outcasts.
No, not at all. These were well-off families, farmers, businessmen, educated women, children.
Yeah.
They were chasing the 19th century version of, retiring rich in a new paradise.
So the big question, the one that just hangs over everything is, how? How did ambition, combined with some really bad judgment and just terrible timing, create this frozen hell?
That's what we need to unpack. How did it all go so wrong?
So let's step back from the horror for a minute. Go back to the beginning, spring of 1846. We need to meet the people who became this legend and, crucially, understand why they decided to risk absolutely everything.
Yeah, and the first thing, I think, is to get rid of this myth that they were destitute or desperate.
Right.
The sources are pretty clear on this. Almost all of them were actually quite prosperous. They were looking for reinvention, yes, but from a position of relative success. They wanted more land, maybe higher status out west.
Okay, so let's start with the Donners themselves. George Donner, he was 62, and his brother Jacob, 56.
Yeah, prosperous farmers, German background. They were financially stable, but California looked like this final grand opportunity, a big adventure, maybe the last big one. Their whole group, when you count family, hired hands, teamsters, was about 25 people.
And George's wife, Tamsin Donner, she's such a striking figure.
Isn't she? Highly educated, a school teacher from back east Massachusetts. Definitely not your stereotypical frontier woman.
And we know she packed books, right? School supplies.
Yes, absolutely. Her big plan for California wasn't just farming. She wanted to open a school, a young ladies' academy. She was investing in the idea of cultural life out there, not just soil and crops.
Which makes what happened even more tragic. Of those 25 people in the Donner group, only 8 made it through the winter.
Just 8. Then you have the Reeds, James F. Reed. He seems like the embodiment of that ambitious American drive.
Yeah, a successful businessman, furniture maker. Apparently, he even served briefly with Abraham Lincoln back in the Black Hawk War.
Right. And his ambition was visible. It was literally on display in the wagon he brought.
Ah, the Pioneer Palace card.
Exactly. This massive, custom-built 2-story wagon. It had a stove inside, sleeping area, spring cushion seats. It was luxurious for the trail.
His fellow travelers called it that, maybe a bit sarcastically.
Probably a bit. But it showed his confidence, his expectation of not just surviving the journey, but arriving in style, ready to build something big. And here's a key point.
Yeah.
The Reed family started with 9 people. All 9 survived. Every single one. That's going to be really important when we talk about how people survive later on.
Wow, okay. And the third main family group?
The Breens. Patrick and Peggy Breen. Irish immigrants, devoutly Catholic. They were traveling with 7 children. Quite a handful.
They represent maybe a different class of pioneer. Less affluent, perhaps.
Perhaps less wealthy than Reed, certainly, but incredibly determined. And Patrick Breen becomes vital to our understanding because his diary survived. Short, terse entries, but they're a day-by-day account from inside the camps.
And like the Reeds?
The Breens also survived completely intact. 9 started, 9 survived. The only 2 families to come through without losing anyone.
Fascinating. So these ambitious, relatively well-off families are heading west. What's pulling them so strongly?
Well, it was the times. The whole national mood was pushing westward. That phrase, manifest destiny, the idea that America was sort of destined, even divinely ordained, to stretch across the whole continent.
That was coined just the year before they left, 1845.
Exactly. It wasn't just politics. It was like a cultural fever. You were supposed to go west.
And why California specifically? Oregon was another option.
California was being marketed as the absolute jackpot. You read the pamphlets, the books from that time. They describe it as a paradise. Perennial springtime, they said. Inexhaustible soil. A place to get away from the economic ups and downs back east.
It sounds like the 1840s version of a gold rush, almost, even before the actual gold rush.
Pretty much. A land rush, a chance for instant prosperity, and it's this intense desire, this hunger for a shortcut to that success that really sets up their fatal mistake.
Which brings us to the man who sold them the shortcut.
Lansford W. Hastings. Every tragedy like this seems to have someone playing the role of the seducer, the promoter with a promise that's too good to be true. Hastings was that guy for the Donner Party.
Who was he? Just some random guy?
No, he was a young lawyer, very ambitious. He'd written a book that became incredibly popular, The Emigrant's Guide to Oregon and California. Think of it like a viral 19th century travel blog, maybe.
Okay.
But it wasn't just a guide. It was really a sales pitch. He was selling California hard. And the key part of his pitch, his secret, was this supposed shortcut, the Hastings cutoff.
And what was the promise? What made it so tempting?
He claimed his route would cut 300, maybe even 400 miles off the established trail. That meant saving a month of travel time.
A month. That's huge when you're racing against winter.
Absolutely critical. A month meant arriving in California in, say, September, with plenty of time to find good land, build a cabin, prepare for winter. Arriving a month later, in October or November, could be disastrous. So the promise was incredibly attractive to people like Reed and Donner, who were planners, businessmen.
But here's the catch, the devastating detail.
The devastating detail is that Hastings had never actually taken wagons over the entire route he was promoting.
Seriously, he hadn't tested it with the kind of heavy wagons they were using.
He'd explored parts of it, maybe on horseback, light and fast. But navigating mountains and deserts with heavy, slow-moving, ox-drawn wagons is a completely different game. He was essentially selling a beta version, untested, as a guaranteed upgrade.
It sounds like betting the farm on a startup with a charismatic CEO but no proven product.
That's a really good modern analogy. And it wasn't just that the information wasn't there. They actively ignored warnings.
Oh, right. The encounter at Fort Laramie.
Yes. James Reed met a very experienced mountain man there, James Clyman. Clyman had literally just come east along the general road. He knew the terrain. He told Reed flat out, basically, take the regular road, don't leave it that other way. It might be impossible.
Pretty clear advice from someone who knows.
Crystal clear. From an expert. But Reed, full of confidence, maybe a little arrogant because of his success, his fancy wagon, he dismissed him.
What did he say?
According to accounts, Reed replied something like, there is a nigher route, and it is of no use to take so much of a roundabout course.
A nigher route. Shorter. Hubris. Pure and simple.
That's exactly what it looks like. Hubris and ambition, overriding caution and expert advice. They chose the charismatic promoter's untested innovation over the seasoned veteran's hard-won wisdom. They thought their resources, their planning, maybe just their sheer will, could overcome the physical realities. That was the first, and perhaps the biggest, failure.
Okay, so they make the choice. When does it become official? When do they actually turn off the main path?
That moment comes on July 19, 1846. They're at a place called the Little Sandy River in what's now Wyoming. The trail literally forks.
A fork in the road, literally and metaphorically.
Exactly. Most emigrants, the vast majority that year, went right. They stayed on the established, proven trail. But about 20 wagons, maybe 80-something people, led by George Donner, who was elected captain, turned left, onto the Hastings cutoff.
And that group turning left, that's the Donner Party.
That's when they officially became the Donner Party,
right,
distinct from the main migration. And it was effectively the point of no return. The consequences started almost immediately.
How so? What happened next?
They pushed on towards Fort Bridger, which was supposed to be a key rendezvous point where Hastings himself would guide them.
But he wasn't there, was he?
No. Hastings had already gone ahead with an earlier, faster group. He just left them a note. And get this, the note basically said the route he'd originally planned through Weber Canyon was actually too difficult for wagons.
Wait, the guy promoting the shortcut immediately tells them part of his shortcut is impassable.
You got it. Can you imagine the frustration? They'd committed. They'd ignored warnings. And the architect of the plan basically abandons them and admits his initial route is flawed right at the start.
So what did they do? They couldn't go back easily.
No, going back wasn't really an option at that point. They were forced to find an alternative path around Weber Canyon, through the incredibly rugged Wasatch Mountains. And this meant, well, it meant building a road.
Building a road with wagons waiting.
Literally. For 16 straight days, the men were out ahead with axes and shovels, hacking a new trail through dense trees and brush, clearing boulders, leveling the ground enough for the wagons to pass.
16 days? How far did they actually travel in that time?
They only covered about 36 miles while doing all that road building. Now, a wagon train on a good day, on a flat trail, might make 10, maybe 15 miles.
So they lost over 2 weeks of travel time just to cover what should have taken maybe 3 days.
Precisely. They were bleeding time, energy, and the oxen were consuming feed, all before they even hit the real challenges Hastings had minimized. Their schedule was already falling apart.
And the next big challenge was the desert, right? The Great Salt Lake Desert?
Yes. And this was probably Hastings' biggest lie, or perhaps his most dangerous miscalculation. He told emigrants it was about a 40-mile drive. Manageable, if tough.
But it wasn't 40 miles.
It was double that, closer to 80 miles.
80 miles across a salt desert with ox-drawn wagons.
It was an absolute ordeal. The sources describe it as a nightmare. They spent 5 days struggling across this immense, flat, white expanse under a brutal sun.
What was the ground like? Was it just hard-packed sand?
Worse, it was often a thin, brittle crust of salt over deep, sticky mud, like walking on a pie crust over thick goo. Wagons broke through, wheels sank up to their hubs. They described it as a bubbling stew.
And water. Hastings must have known water was the critical issue.
He did, but he vastly underestimated the distance. Their water casks ran dry by the 3rd day. People were suffering from dehydration, heat exhaustion. The glare off the white salt likely caused severe eye pain, maybe early snow blindness.
What about the animals? The oxen were crucial.
The animals suffered terribly. Driven mad by thirst, many of the oxen bolted during the night, running off into the darkness, searching for water that wasn't there. They just scattered and were lost.
How many did they lose?
The accounts say they lost at least 36 head of cattle. That's their engine, their transportation. It's also a future food source. Gone.
Devastating.
Because they lost so many oxen, they didn't have enough pulling power for all the wagons. They were forced to abandon 4 wagons right there in the desert.
Including
James Reed's Pioneer Palace car. All that careful planning, the symbol of his ambition and status, just left behind to rot in the salt.
So that whole detour the Hastings cut off so far.
Right.
What was the net result?
The net result was that it cost them a full month. A precious, irreplaceable month. They gained nothing in distance, lost vital resources, and shattered their timeline.
And you can imagine the move in the camp.
Oh, yeah. The pride was gone. The confidence was shaken. They were physically exhausted, mentally stressed. And this kind of constant pressure, this environmental stress, it starts to wear away at the social bonds. Little tensions become big conflicts.
Which leads to the first real crack in their group, the first violence.
Yes. It happens on October 5th, 1846. They're past the desert now, but still struggling, trying to make up time. They reach a steep, sandy hill. Oxen are exhausted. Wagons are getting stuck.
Reapers must have been incredibly frayed.
Exactly. A driver working for the Grays family, a man named John Snyder, is just furiously whipping his team, trying to get them up the hill. James Reed, who's already lost his prize wagon and probably feeling the loss of status, steps in. Maybe to help, maybe to criticize. It's unclear.
And Snyder reacts badly.
Very badly. Apparently, Snyder starts cursing Reed, maybe blames him for the delays. The argument escalates instantly. Snyder swings his heavy whip handle and hits Reed hard on the head, drawing blood.
And Reed
Reacts instinctively. Fueled by pain, maybe weeks of frustration boiling over, he pulls out his hunting knife and stabs Snyder.
Kills him.
Kills him right there. John Snyder dies almost instantly.
Oh my God. So a member of the party kills another member. How did the rest of them react?
It completely fractured the group. Instantly, people took sides. Some supported Reed, feeling he acted in self-defense or under extreme provocation. His family, the Donners, generally sided with him.
But others must have seen it as murder.
Absolutely. Others, particularly the German immigrant Louis Keseberg, were outraged. They demanded frontier justice. They wanted Reed hanged on the spot.
Keysburg. We'll hear that name again, won't we?
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
His reaction here is telling. There was no formal leader with the authority to convene a proper trial. It was chaos.
So what did they do? They couldn't just hang him without agreement.
Reed's wife, Margaret, apparently pleaded desperately for his life. In the end, they reached a grim compromise. They decided to banish him.
Banish him, just send him out alone.
Exactly. James Reed was forced to ride ahead, leave his wife and children behind with the very group that had just condemned him, and try to make it to California alone to get help.
That seems incredibly risky for everyone. They lose a capable leader.
One of the most capable, most organized members, yes. At a moment when they desperately needed leadership and cohesion. It was a catastrophic decision, born out of division and the breakdown of social order. It removed, arguably, the one person who might have had the drive to keep things together when the ultimate crisis hit.
And right after this happens, they get more bad news, don't they?
Crushing news. Around September 26, so just before the killing, they finally limp back onto the main California trail, the one they'd left weeks before.
And they meet other travelers.
Yes, people who took the normal route. And those travelers tell them the truth. The Hastings cutoff, the supposed shortcut they'd endured hell for.
Wasn't shorter.
It was 125 miles longer than the established route they should have stayed on.
Oh, that must have been soul-destroying.
Imagine. All that suffering, the lost time, the dead animals, the abandoned property, the violence, all for nothing. Worse than nothing. It actually set them back massively.
So let's recap the timing. It's now late October.
Late October. They're exhausted, depleted, short on food. Oxens are weak. They lost maybe 5 weeks compared to where they should have been.
And they're facing the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Exactly. The final, biggest hurdle. The dream of California paradise is long gone. Now it's just a desperate, frantic race against the sky, against the first snows of winter in the high mountains, a race they were already losing.
They were so close, though. Geographically, they almost made it over the pass.
Agonizingly close. They struggled up into the mountains, reached Truckee Lake, which we now call Donner Lake. It's beautiful there, but it sits right at the eastern base of the main summit. They were just a few miles, maybe 1 or 2 good days' travel, from crossing the pass and starting the descent into California.
40 miles, maybe, as the crow flies to the settlements.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So close. And then, well, that day arrived, as some survivors called it, late October, 1846.
The weather turned.
Turn doesn't even cover it. An incredibly early, incredibly violent blizzard slammed into the Sierras, out of nowhere.
How much snow?
The first storm dumped 5, maybe 6 feet of snow almost immediately. Just boom, the troll vanished. The pass became completely impassable for the wagons, for the weakened oxen.
So they had to retreat.
They had to fall back down to the lake, find some shelter, and just hope it was a freak storm that would pass quickly.
But it wasn't.
It wasn't. A few days later, a second storm hit. Much worse. And this one lasted for 8 solid days. Non-stop snow and wind.
8 days.
By the time that second storm finally broke around November 4th, the pass was buried under more than 10 feet of snow. Some estimates are even higher. The mountains, their last obstacle, had become their prison.
We were trapped.
Completely trapped. And they would remain trapped there, by the lake, and at a second camp a few miles away, for the next 4 months. 4 months of winter, starvation, and escalating horror.
What did they do for shelter? Did they build cabins?
They were lucky in one sense.
Shelter.
There were 3 simple, rough log cabins already there at the lake, probably built by earlier immigrants or trappers. They crammed into those. The rest had to build makeshift shelters, lean-tos really, up against large rocks or trees, using pine branches, canvas from the wagons, quilts.
And ox hides, did they use those?
Yes. The ox hides they had managed to save became crucial roofing material. Thin protection against incredible cold and ongoing snow.
Can you just imagine the conditions inside those shelters? Dark, cramped.
Freezing cold, smoky from small, inefficient fires. Dozens of people crammed together. The smell must have been overwhelming unwashed bodies, sickness, fear, and eventually, the smell of starvation and death. Absolute misery.
And the starvation began almost immediately. They didn't have large reserves.
No, they'd used up most reserves trying to make up time. The first food source was the remaining oxen. They started butchering them right away.
We know this from Patrick Breen's diary, right?
Yes, his diary is chillingly sparse, but tells the story. On November 29th, just a few weeks after being trapped, he writes, "Still snowing now, about 3 feet deep, Killed my last oxen today.
His last oxen. So the main source of meat and fat was gone before December even started for his family.
Exactly. After the oxen, they turned to the next available source, their dogs. These weren't just work animals. Some were likely family pets they had brought all the way from Illinois.
Breen mentions that too, doesn't he? A dog named Towser.
He does. In late February, showing just how long the desperation lasted, he writes, "Shot Towser today and dressed his flesh." Killing and eating a companion animal. It shows how far things had deteriorated.
Once the dogs were gone, what was left?
They became desperate. They resorted to things that are barely food. Boiling the ox hides scraped from the roofs.
Boiling hides. What nutritional value is there in that?
Almost none. It creates this foul, gelatinous glue. Mostly collagen, which humans can't really digest effectively. It might fill your stomach, give you a false sense of fullness, but it provides virtually no energy. It was a sign of utter desperation.
What else?
They ate anything they could find. Twigs, tree bark, mice they managed to trap in the cabins. They boiled bones down to almost nothing.
We should probably talk about what starvation actually does to a person, physically and mentally.
It's brutal. It's the body literally consuming itself.
Right.
First, you burn through any fat reserves. Then the body starts breaking down muscle tissue for energy.
Including vital muscles.
Including the heart muscle itself, which actually shrinks. The brain gets starved of glucose, leading to confusion, extreme irritability, apathy, and this constant gnawing, obsessive focus on food. Nothing else matters.
And physically? Besides weakness.
Your body struggles to stay warm, making you incredibly vulnerable to hypothermia, even inside a crude shelter. You can develop edema, painful swelling, usually in the legs and feet, as fluid balance breaks down. It's a slow, agonizing decline. The elderly and the very young were typically the first to succumb.
Facing this slow decline, did anyone try to get out, to get help?
Yes. By mid-December, it was clear no rescue was coming unless they initiated it themselves. They were completely cut off. So a group decided they had to try and walk out.
Walk out through that snow?
They fashioned crude snow shoes. They weren't sophisticated. They were made from wooden oxbows strung with strips of oxhide. 17 people, men, women, and even some older children volunteered for this desperate attempt. It became known as the Forlorn Hope.
Forlorn Hope. That name says it all.
It really does. It was, frankly, a suicide mission with a tiny chance of success. They left with minimal rations, maybe 6 days' worth per person, thinking they could reach settlements relatively quickly.
But they got lost, didn't they?
Almost immediately, caught in another blizzard, disoriented in the deep snow. Traveling on those clumsy snowshoes was incredibly exhausting, burning calories they couldn't afford to lose.
How long did their ordeal last?
It lasted 33 agonizing days. It was like the whole tragedy of the winter camps compressed into 1 month of mobile horror. Food ran out within the first week.
There's a particularly sad story from the Forlorn Hope group about Charles Stanton.
Yes, Stanton's story is heartbreaking. He was one of the 2 men who had actually ridden ahead earlier, reached California, got supplies, and then returned to help the main party. He chose to come back.
He didn't have to.
No, he came back out of loyalty or duty, and on the 6th day of the Forlorn Hope trek, he was snowblind, completely exhausted. He just sat down in the snow, told the others to go on without him, said he'd catch up later.
But he didn't.
No. He died right there, alone. A real moment of quiet sacrifice amidst the growing desperation.
And as others in the Forlorn Hope started dying from cold and starvation, they made the choice, didn't they?
They did. The ultimate taboo. The survivors' accounts are clear. They made a conscious, grim decision. To live, they would have to eat the bodies of those who died.
Was it just chaos? Or did they try to manage it somehow?
They tried to impose some kind of structure, some final shred of morality onto the horror. They reportedly made a pact. No one would eat the flesh of their own relatives.
A line in the sand. A way to maybe distance themselves psychologically. Keep it about survival, not predation.
Perhaps. A desperate attempt to maintain some boundary, some rule, in a situation where all rules had broken down. It shows how hard they fought against becoming completely dehumanized, even as they took that step.
But even that boundary didn't hold for everyone, did it? There was more violence.
The psychological breakdown was severe. One man, William Foster, apparently became crazed with hunger. There were 2 Native American guides with the Forlorn Hope, Luis and Salvador. They had refused to participate in the cannibalism.
Then Foster,
according to some accounts, chased them down and shot them. Not just for food, perhaps, but maybe out of a terrifying blend of desperation and paranoia. It shows the complete mental collapse that extreme, prolonged starvation can induce.
After 33 days, did any of them make it?
Yes. Against all odds, 7 members of the Forlorn Hope survived. 2 men and significantly 5 women. They finally staggered into a Native American village, likely Miwok, on the western slope of the Sierras.
And that's how the outside world finally learned what was happening.
That was the first concrete proof. Those 7 survivors, barely alive, were the ones who raised the alarm and confirmed the nightmare trapped back in the mountains.
Now, you mentioned the historical accounts are explicit about the cannibalism, but what does modern archaeology say? Have they found direct evidence at the campsites?
That's one of the really chilling and slightly mysterious aspects. Archaeological digs at the Donner Lake camp and the other sites have found thousands upon thousands of tiny bone fragments, overwhelmingly from animals. Horses, oxen, deer, dogs, even small rodents. The ground is littered with evidence of every single animal resource they consumed. They clearly butchered and processed these animals very thoroughly.
But no human bones showing the same kind of butchering marks.
To date, no definitively identified butchered human bones have been found and confirmed from the main campsites. Now, this absolutely does not mean the historical accounts are wrong. The testimony from survivors and rescuers is too strong, too consistent.
So what might that archaeological silence mean?
Well, it could mean a couple things. Perhaps the human remains were processed differently, maybe boiled down so completely for marrow and grease that the fragments are unrecognizable, or were scattered away from the main living areas. Or it strongly suggests just how resourceful they were in hunting and trapping anything else first. It implies they pushed that final, terrible choice off for as long as humanly possible, using every scrap of animal life they could find before resorting to the dead. They fought against it, tooth and nail.
So the Forlorn Hope survivors reach safety, raise the alarm. What happens next in California?
The news spread quickly and caused shock and immediate action in the small, fledgling American settlements like Sutter's Fort. Relief efforts were organized almost immediately. These weren't official military operations. They were volunteer groups, often funded by donations, led by men familiar with the mountains.
How many relief parties went out?
Between February and April of 1847, 4 main separate relief parties fought their way back up into the Sierras to rescue the survivors. And the conditions they faced were almost as bad as what the Donner Party had endured: deep snow, freezing temperatures, the risk of avalanches. These were incredibly brave rescue efforts.
And what did these rescuers find when they reached the camps?
They found scenes that haunted them for the rest of their lives. Moments of incredible relief, like finding the Breen family huddled together, but alive. But also scenes of unimaginable squalor and death. And they found individuals pushed beyond the brink.
This brings us back to Louis Keseberg, the man who wanted Reed hanged.
Yes. Keseberg ended up being the very last person rescued from the camps. The 4th Relief Party found him in late April, completely alone in one of the cabins.
What was the scene like?
According to the rescuers' accounts, it was horrific. He was surrounded by dismembered human bodies and body parts. There was reportedly a pot over the fire containing human organs, liver, and lungs. And chillingly, he was apparently found with pistols and silks belonging to Tamsen Donner, George Donner's wife.
Tamsen Donner. She hadn't been rescued earlier.
No. George Donner had died at the Alder Creek camp. Tamsen had stayed with him until the end, then tried to make it to the lake camp alone. She arrived, but then disappeared. Keseberg was later explicitly accused of murdering her for money she was rumored to be carrying.
Was he ever convicted?
No, there wasn't enough concrete evidence for a conviction. But the circumstances, the state he was found in, the presence of her belongings, it cemented his reputation as, well, perhaps the ultimate symbol of humanity's collapse in the camps. Whether it was pure survival or something darker, we'll likely never know for sure.
But amidst that darkness, there were also moments of incredible heroism during the rescues, weren't there?
Absolutely. It's crucial to remember those, too. They provide that vital counterpoint. The story of John Stark during the 3rd Relief effort is just phenomenal.
What happened with Stark?
The 3rd Relief Party managed to bring out a number of survivors, but they were running low on food themselves and physically spent. They had to make a terrible choice: leave some of the weaker survivors behind at a spot that became known as Starved Camp, promising to send help back. They left 11 people there, 9 of whom were children.
Just left them there.
They felt they had no choice to save the others. But John Stark, one of the rescuers, refused. He was described as a man of immense physical strength and character. He simply wouldn't abandon those children.
So what did he do? He couldn't carry all of them.
He essentially invented a one-man relay system. He would carry 2 children a short distance forward through the deep snow, set them down, maybe give them some encouragement, and then struggle back to get the next 2. He leapfrogged them, step by painful step, back towards safety.
By himself.
By himself. Battling exhaustion, the cold, the immense physical effort. It's an incredible display of selfless endurance and pure human decency in the absolute worst circumstances.
Did he save them?
He saved all the children left in his care. Patrick Breen, one of the children he rescued, later famously said she owed her life to nobody but God and Stark and the Virgin Mary. It's a powerful reminder that even when society breaks down, individual choices matter profoundly. Stark shows humanity.
Okay, so we've seen the whole arc. Let's try to synthesize. Why? Why did this happen? You mentioned a cascade of failures.
Right. It wasn't just one thing. It was a combination, a perfect storm, if you will. Failure number one, as we discussed, was that initial fatal choice driven by hubris.
Choosing Hastings' untested shortcut over Kleiman's expert warning.
Exactly. Successful people, used to taking risks and winning, made a bad gamble. They thought their ambition and resources could conquer geography. They were wrong, and the logistical impact was immense. The cutoff was 125 miles longer, and the delays cost them that critical month.
So they lost over 30 days, essentially.
Easily. If they had stayed on the main trail, they almost certainly would have cleared the Sierras before the heavy snows hit in late October. That single choice, born of wanting it faster and easier, put them in the wrong place at the worst possible time.
Which leads to failure number two. Bad luck and timing.
Yep. Their human error put them in the path of nature's fury. They didn't just encounter a normal Sierra winter. They ran headlong into one of the earliest and most severe winters on record for that era. It was catastrophically bad luck, timed precisely because of their earlier mistakes.
It shows how even the best plans can be undone by factors totally outside human control.
Absolutely. And then failure number three is about human biology under that extreme pressure. And this ties into the sociology of who survived and why.
You mentioned the demographics earlier. Men died at higher rates.
Significantly higher rates than women. This is often seen in extreme starvation and cold situations. Women generally have slightly higher body fat percentages, which can provide a small survival edge against cold and famine. Biologically, they prove slightly more resilient. Age was also a huge factor. The very young and the elderly died first, as their bodies had fewer reserves.
But beyond biology, what was the biggest sociological factor in survival?
Hands down, it was the strength and cohesion of the family unit.
How so?
Look at the two groups that survived completely intact. The Reeds and the Breens. 9 Reeds started, 9 survived. 9 Breens started, 9 survived. Individuals traveling alone or members of families that fragmented or lacked strong leadership, like maybe the Grays or the Donners themselves after George and Jacob were weakened, fared much worse. Teamsters hired on for the journey also had very low survival rates.
So sticking together, sharing resources within the family, providing mutual support, that was key.
It seems to have been the single most critical factor, psychologically and practically. Families like the Reeds and Breens maintained discipline. They likely had stricter rationing, shared warmth, cared for their sick, and provided crucial emotional support to keep hope alive. That primal instinct to protect your immediate kin proves stronger than any larger group identity.
It's interesting about the Reeds, given that James Reed himself was banished.
It's a paradox, isn't it? His banishment, which seemed like a disaster for the group, actually guaranteed his survival. It got him out before the worst of the entrapment. And because he survived, he was able to reach California and become a key organizer of the first relief efforts that ultimately saved his family and others.
And his absence didn't cause his family unit back at the lake to fall apart.
Apparently not. Marguerite seems to have held them together with incredible fortitude. So his banishment had this strange, unforeseen, positive outcome for his own family's survival, even as it weakened the larger group initially.
It's all just layer upon layer of tragedy and complexity. Is there anything, any symbol of hope, maybe, to come out of this?
There is one small, incredibly poignant object that survived, which I think speaks volumes. It belonged to Patty Reed, James and Margaret's 8-year-old daughter.
What was it?
Remember when they had to abandon the palace car in the desert? Patty was told she had to leave all her toys behind. Space and weight were critical.
But she kept something.
She couldn't bear to part with one specific toy. A tiny wooden doll, only about 4 inches high, a gift from her grandmother. She called it Dolly.
What did she do with it?
She secretly hid it inside the folds of her dress. And she kept it hidden, protected it, through everything that followed. Through the rest of the journey, the starvation in the mountains, the months trapped in the cabin, the terrifying rescue attempts, she held on to that tiny piece of her old life.
Did the doll survive?
It did. Patty Reed and her doll both survived the entire ordeal. And that doll exists today. You can see it in a museum near Sutter's Fort. It's just this incredibly powerful little artifact. It represents, I think, the resilience of the human spirit. Even in the absolute depths of horror, facing death and dehumanization, this little girl clung to a symbol of normalcy, of childhood, of innocence. It's a reminder that even when everything is stripped away, the instinct to protect something small, something hopeful, can endure.
So the final count. 87 people were part of the Donner Party group that got trapped.
87 took the cutoff and got caught by the snow.
Oh.
Only 48 ultimately survived.
48. And they carried the physical and psychological scars forever. They became known, unfortunately, as the Cannibal Party.
That label stuck, fairly or unfairly. Their story became this dark, cautionary tale woven into the fabric of the westward expansion myth. It forces us, I think, to look beyond the heroic narrative of pioneers conquering the wilderness.
It shows the flip side, how ambition can lead to disaster, how vulnerable humans are to nature, and what happens to society itself under unbearable pressure.
Exactly. It's a stark reminder that the dream can curdle into a nightmare, and that the line between civilization and savagery can be terrifyingly thin when survival is at stake.
Which really leaves us, and everyone listening, with that deeply uncomfortable question the Donner Party forces us to ask ourselves, doesn't it?
It does. If you were in that situation, freezing, starving, watching your loved ones die, rescue, uncertain, what would you do? What lines would you cross to survive? Where does your humanity end and the survival instinct take over completely?
It's a question without an easy answer, maybe no answer until you're faced with it.
Hopefully none of us ever will be. But thinking about it, that's the enduring, unsettling power of their story.
And so, another chapter closes. For more journeys into history's forgotten files, please like and subscribe. Your next story awaits.